So as Mrs. Nace said, today we're going to be talking about health and body image. And as we do that, I would first like to ask you a few questions about the topic and introduce myself a little bit more thoroughly. So, first off, what is health? I know it's a little awkward to define, but what first comes to your mind? Yeah.
That's what comes to mind with health is happiness and wellness.
Happiness and wellness, I love that. Anything else?
What you eat.
Yeah, what you eat, how
keeps your body moving.
what keeps your body moving, so like exercising and eating to get energy. Exactly, great. Anything else? Wonderful though, that you guys know what health is. Oh yeah, sure.
The functionality of a human being.
Yeah, how you're functioning, great. So now, for something maybe a little bit harder to share, what does body image mean to you? Someone new? Yeah. Yeah, how your body is in general. Sure.
How you look at yourself.
Yeah, how you view yourself. That's like the dictionary definition. Does anyone have any personal associations with that word, body image? That phrase. Yeah?
Yes, I'm raising my hand. Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought you were. Anyone have any they'd be willing to share? Yeah?
Whoa, no stripes. They make me look fat.
All right, yeah. Sometimes we have those thoughts, those like characterizing ourselves. So we say that stripes, you know, they make us look less like we want us to look. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about negative thoughts like that today, saying I don't look good in this or that. We talk about that a bit and changing that sort of mindset, but thank you for that. Personally, when I think about my body, I think pretty positively about it. I'm confident in who I am and what I look like. So that's my associations. But I know a lot of people who have negative associations with body image, and not just for wearing stripes, but for their body in general, right? And so we're going to be getting into that a little bit today as well. And now for probably the hardest question I'm going to ask you all day, so don't be worried. How is body image related to health? Someone who hasn't heard this presentation already. Yeah, sure.
I suppose the body image can be related to health because, I mean, if you're not happy with the way you look, it can go down on your health because then you'll start doing things that either could be good or could be negative.
Exactly, that's a good way to describe it. So how I kind of sum up body image being related to health is this cycle. Your body image affects your mental health, which affects your physical health, which affects your happiness level, and the cycle continues and continues. And so to help you understand this cycle a little bit more thoroughly, I want to go through it with a specific example. So let's say we start off with negative body image. So we feel bad about our bodies. This person feels bad about their body. If they feel bad about the physical representation of themselves, then it's very easy for them to fall into feeling bad about themselves. So if they feel like their body is worthless, like it's not good enough, then they feel like they themselves are worthless. And those feelings of worthlessness are characteristic of depression, which is a serious mental illness. And that mental illness has physical consequences. For instance, depression affects sleep cycles, which you've probably already learned in this semester. That affects your health because getting too much or too little sleep can hurt your cognitive ability and your memory and all sorts of different things. Additionally, depression causes physical harm through self-harm. And if you're physically not healthy, you're either in pain or you're just not able to do everything you'd like to be doing, and so you're not going to be as happy. And with how we started in this cycle, feeling bad about ourselves, that lack of happiness is often blamed on the individual themselves. And so then they even feel even worse about their body. And the cycle continues and continues until it gets to an even more extreme negative consequence. Unless some positivity is introduced into the cycle. Similarly, if we start out with positive body image instead, then we're less prone to a whole wide range of mental illnesses, which makes us less prone to many physical illnesses, and more likely to be happy. I'm not saying that people with positive body image are never unhappy or never have physical or mental illnesses. That's not the case. However, they're less prone to these problems. And the different causes and effects of these different parts of the cycle are what we're going to be really getting into today. But before I do that, I do think we need to address a question that some of you may be asking. Why am I here? I just graduated a year ago. I'm 18, barely older than you guys. I don't even go to school here anymore. I go to school in LA, so why am I the one talking to you? Well, there are a few reasons. The main one being that 4 years ago, in the middle of my freshman year, I developed an eating disorder. I saw the other girls and felt like I wasn't as pretty as them, and I felt like I was eating way more than them and was chubbier than them. And so I started eating less. I started restricting the calories I ate and starving myself until it got to the point where I was in emotional and physical pain every single day. Until the middle of my sophomore year, when after one argument with my mom about me denying there being anything wrong and ending up crying in my room, both out of being upset and mad that I got upset with her and also just in a lot of pain because I was so hungry, I went out of my room and I said, "Mom, I need help." And after that, I went to a nutritionist. We found me a nutritionist, and through 3 years of working with her, I am now 3.5 years later, completely physically recovered and almost completely emotionally and mentally recovered. So I don't want you to feel bad for me, because I had those resources to get better. I had my nutritionist, my mom, and some close friends who stuck by me that enabled me to be where I am today. But the thing is, as I was recovering, I knew another girl who was going through the same thing as me. And I saw her a few months into my recovery, which was going very slowly. And I said, I do not want her to have to go through what I went through. So I started eating more to be an example for her, to be a model that she could copy, and so that she didn't go as far into her eating disorder as I had to get better. And I want to be a model for all of you as well. If any of you are struggling with an eating disorder, I want to give you hope and help you. If any of you are struggling with negative body image, I want to do that for you as well. And I want to give you the tools to help other people, even if you aren't struggling with that. So that's part of why I'm here. Because at one point I was that girl obsessed with the scale, and I do not want any of you to be. Also, through this process, I worked 3 years with a nutritionist, as I said, so I learned a lot about what health is and what's healthy both for myself and just for people in general. And I got a lot of information from that, and a paper I had to do in my junior year for Mrs. Schuster, who's also the leadership teacher now. She had us do a research paper on any topic we wanted. And so it was very relevant to my life at the time. I chose eating disorders and negative body image and what caused them. And through that, I learned a lot about the media and families' effect on negative body image and eating disorders, some of which I'm going to share with you today. So I hope that you'll understand that what I'm telling you is not just some facts I found on Wikipedia or things I'm making up off the top of my head. These are some real things I've done some serious research into. And that with both of those facts combined, my experiences and my research, you'll be more inclined to really listen to what I have to say today. But with that out of the way, let's get into this. Starting with some definitions that I do think you guys can help me with, but I think are important to establish as a baseline of knowledge, so then we can just kind of fly through this presentation. So, first of all, what is the media? Yeah.
Things that you find online, people that you talk to. Some of it could be about cyberbullying. It could be emotional, it could be non-emotional, it could be information.
Yeah, so definitely the internet and social media is part of the media. But not only is the internet the media is kind of mass means of communication. So could we think of some other examples as well?
The news.
News, good, yeah.
Models.
Models, yes, thank you. Anything else? Missing a big one. There. That screen. Yeah. So it's the TV. Yeah, there we go. Anything else you can think of?
Social media.
Yeah, okay, yeah, he said that, yep. All right, awesome. So those things, magazines, right? All sorts of those things. The mass means of communication, as I said. But you guys know what that is. You see examples of it all over the place. That's kind of in the nature of the media. Could someone now tell me what BMI stands for? I heard it whispered over there. Body mass index. Yeah, thank you. And what's it based on? Do you know? Do any of you know? Anyone here know?
your height and your weight.
Exactly, your height and your weight. Don't be shy to participate. You guys know this stuff. Although I kind of hope that you don't know what Thinspiration or Thinspo is. But does anyone know who hasn't heard this presentation before?
Well, it sounds like the word thin and inspiration.
Yeah, so it does have that concept behind it, and that's why it's named that. But what they are actually communities online that take form through hashtags, sometimes even chat groups, and just memes in general, that encourage people to starve themselves in order to be thin, and they say that it is worth it to be skinny, even if it involves hurting yourself. So these are very dangerous communities, and we're going to get into them a little bit more later in the presentation, but I just want to introduce the idea now because it's kind of a lot to absorb. Do you have a question?
I've heard about that stuff. I've just never known that's what it was called. I've just heard a lot about it because like I've seen a lot of it.
Yeah, exactly. So I bet some of you have seen it as well. Body dysmorphic disorder is when you look in the mirror and you obsess over a minor flaw or one that isn't even really there. The most extreme example of this and the most clear one is that picture I had up at the beginning when you guys were walking in. I saw some of you commenting on it. It's that girl who is very, very thin. You see her bones and she looks in the mirror and she sees herself as chubby. That is body dysmorphic disorder. But it also comes into play in more subtle ways, I think, in a lot of our daily lives. For instance, have you ever been getting ready for school or for a party or something and you're obsessing about how your hair looks or some pimple on your face or something small like that and you're just saying it looks so horrible or so big and you tell your family or your friends and they go, I don't know what you're talking about, it looks fine. Often, we assume that they're lying, right? That they're just being nice. But it's so possible that our minds are the ones lying to us and they're actually telling the truth. And body dysmorphic disorder is a common cause and effect of eating disorders. I've talked about eating disorders a little bit already, so I'm kind of assuming you know what they are. But could anyone just give us a general, non-specific definition of eating disorders? Go to you. When you don't eat, that's part of it, yeah. It can also be overeating. And also involved in it is a mental aspect, just kind of being obsessed with food and compulsive about your behavior with food. So it's any disordered way of thinking and or consuming food. And there are three main types of eating disorders: anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating disorder. Anorexia nervosa is what I experienced, and it is this fear of gaining weight or being overweight that leads to one starving themselves or over-exercising in order to achieve their goals. And a big part of it is that their goal weight is pretty much never attainable. If they reach it, they feel like they need to be smaller after that. So they're never satisfied with themselves, no matter how thin that they get. And someone doesn't need to be starving or at a starving weight to be anorexic if they're engaging in these behaviors and that mindset. So that's something to keep in mind. Bulimia nervosa is eating just as much or more that is normal and healthy for your body, then purging it out of your system using diuretics or laxatives or just making yourself throw up. And bulimia and anorexia can happen at the same time, and obviously that just makes the effects on the individual happen quicker and more intensely. Binge eating disorder is a little bit different, and as we go through the presentation and the effects of eating disorders, you're going to kind of see that. But it has a similar mindset behind it. It's this feeling that your body is so ugly or overweight that you feel like there's no point in taking care of yourself, so you just give up on being healthy. Or you feel so much body shame or shame about yourself in general that you turn to food as comfort and end up eating more than is healthy for your body or than you even actually want, just out of that kind of compulsive behavior. And binge eating disorder is often associated with obesity. So for our last definition, can someone define obesity? Maybe someone will, yeah.
Obesity is, if you want to go off the cliff with the things, about the fact that you're either overweight to a point or you're more overweight than what they would want you to be.
Yeah, so you're overweight in a way that's unhealthy for your body. Yeah? Okay, so now with that, the effects of negative body image. We went over most of this, but there's just a few more things I have to go into. So as we established, negative body image leads to self-doubt, and it leads to depression. But it also leads to anxiety, and this is especially true in high school and college. Do you have a question?
Is depression and anxiety usually, do they come together usually, or no?
Not usually. They can come together. I mean, people have them separately, but they can happen together. I know people with both. Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen that same comment before.
Yeah. So we're just about to get to that, actually. So in high school and college, as I said, we have a lot of stresses, right? We have school, we have homework, we have work, we have to manage family, we have to manage friends, we have extracurriculars. There's a lot going on. And if you haven't felt stressed yet in your high school career, I'm sorry, but you will at some point. Many times in college this first semester and in high school, I felt like Charlie Brown here. My anxieties have anxieties. Although it's kind of sad, it's just kind of how high school and college are. But the thing is, if you add worrying about your body and what you're eating on top of that, that can be the thing that switches that normal anxiety and that feeling a bit overwhelmed over to having clinical anxiety. So that's really a problem. Negative body image also leads to obesity. This might seem a little counterintuitive, but it's again those feelings of giving up on your body because you feel like it's not worth taking care of, or turning to food for comfort. And if that reminds you of what we talked about for binge eating disorder, that's good, because obesity and binge eating disorder often come hand in hand. So negative body image also leads to binge eating disorder, and it leads to anorexia and bulimia. So negative body image leads to eating disorders. And personally, I believe, and the statistics support me in this belief, that eating disorders are really the most negative consequence of negative body image, because it's taking the negative action for those negative feelings. And since they really are the culmination of negative body image, it makes sense that they lead to more intense versions of anxiety and depression and obesity, and people with eating disorders are more likely to get those problems happening to them in the first place, to have anxiety, depression, and obesity, and even more immense self-doubt. But eating disorders also lead to consequences of their own that body image itself doesn't lead to. For instance, eating disorders lead to a decrease in cognitive ability. So your brain works less well because of eating disorders. Additionally, eating disorders lead to irritability. This is true for all three types of eating disorders, simply because you're worrying so much about food, so your mind is kind of all over the place and it's harder to interact with people, and just because you're not feeling nutritionally healthy or balanced, you just don't feel very good, and that can make you kind of grumpy. But with bulimia and anorexia, another element comes into play as well. It's the concept of hanger. If you don't know what that is, it's the combination of the word hunger and anger. The best demonstration I have of that is a commercial from a while back that had the Hulk like running around destroying everything, and someone hands him a Snickers bar, he eats it, and he turns back into Bruce Banner.
Yoda.
Yeah, so that is the idea of hangry. And it's really a problem, but it also helps our body. It's our way of body telling us when we're hungry. So, because your body knows it needs food to have energy, right? And so when your body's really hungry and it really, really needs food now, your body tells you your emotions, and those come out as negative. But it's more of a big problem than just being grumpy. Because when you're irritable, you push people away. And as I talked about, the only reason I got through my eating disorder is because of the resources and the support I had. If you push people away because you're irritable, because of your eating disorder, you then don't have people to help you through it. And then the other effects affect you for longer, and you just keep on getting worse and worse. So this irritability is a larger consequence than it may seem. Eating disorders also have a negative impact on memory. For me, this is pretty scary, because what are we? For the most part, we are our experiences, and eating disorders take those away. Eating disorders also lead to fatigue. For binge eating disorder, it's that extra weight and also just the excess food you're eating. Your body's taking a lot of energy to process that because it's not used to it, and so that takes away from the energy you can give to other daily activities. And for anorexia and bulimia, you're just not getting enough energy because you're not getting or keeping in enough food. And so for all three, you just feel that fatigue, and I know for me, this was really hard in my daily life because I wanted to keep on doing everything and pretending like everything was fine. But simply walking through the halls was a challenge. Every day, walking through this hall for about a year, I felt like I was going to fall over and like I was going to collapse. And just sometimes just standing in choir was so hard. And so eating disorders make daily life really, really hard for the individual. Similarly, eating disorders lead to impaired body systems, so like your immune system and other organ systems in your body. And again, this works in a different way for binge eating disorder and anorexia and bulimia. For binge eating disorder, it's that extra weight. It actually puts pressure on your organs when it's to a point that's not healthy for your body, that extra weight does. And that makes it harder for your organs to function. Additionally, if you're eating excess food, that can cause cholesterol to build up in your arteries, which makes it harder for your heart to pump, which can lead to heart failure. For anorexia and bulimia, it does work differently, as I said, and it's a little bit more complicated. So I'm just gonna kind of go through the basics first, just reestablishing that we need food to have energy, right? And we need energy to keep our organs running. We all know that, yeah? So your body knows that too. And it also knows the most important organs that need to be functioning at pretty much 100% in order for our body to work are our lungs, our brain, and our heart. And so with anorexia, when you're not getting enough food, or with bulimia, when you're just not keeping enough in to give you energy, your body's like, okay, what do I do? I don't have enough energy to distribute all I usually would. So I'll take some of what I'd usually give to, say, the immune system and distribute it to my heart, my lungs, and my brain because they need the energy. But that leaves your immune system weaker. And that means you can't fight off diseases as well because that's what your immune system is responsible for. And so then you get sick, right? And you have to use energy to fight off those illnesses, which uses up more of the little energy you're getting from the not enough food that is going into your system. And as that process continues, or simply as you don't get sick, but you're just not giving yourself enough, and your body doesn't really have any more move to room, you experience organ failure and often heart failure. So for all of the eating disorders, they lead to death. Eating disorders lead to death. In fact, eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any psychiatric illness. So out of all mental illnesses, eating disorders kill the most people. Not only that, but up to 20% of individuals with chronic anorexia nervosa will die as a result of their illness. So 1 out of 5 people will die who have anorexia. I knew 5 people who had anorexia while I was going through it. And statistically, 1 of us was likely to die. That could have been me if I hadn't found my nutritionist. So eating disorders are a big problem, and I think we can all agree upon that. But you might be thinking, yes, they're a problem, but they don't happen to that many people. Negative body image doesn't go that far. I'm an outlier. It very rarely goes to this extent. But sadly, that's not the case. ANAD estimates that at least 30 million people of all ages and genders suffer from an eating disorder in the US. That's 10% of the population. And that's in the US alone. Eating disorders are a problem in all developed countries. So you also have to add the numbers from Asia and Europe as well. And that's already a big number. Not only that, but anorexia is the 3rd most common chronic illness among adolescents. So out of all long-lasting illnesses, both physical and mental, anorexia is the 3rd most common in teenagers. And if you combine that statistic with the one we read a few moments ago about 1 out of 5 people dying who have anorexia, that's pretty frightening. When I look at these statistics, I often don't believe them. Because I don't see how that could happen. How these diseases that are only prevalent because we don't believe in ourselves and we don't like our bodies, it seems like something that so easily could be fixed. So how is it such a problem? And I'm confused by that until I look at this statistic. That 4 out of 5 children are afraid of being fat. And When I look at that, I'm no longer confused. Because that 4 out of 5 children afraid of being fat, it's not a fear of being unhealthy. It's a fear of being a certain way. So it's 4 out of 5 children who are set up to not like themselves unless they look like what they think society wants them to look like. 4 out of 5 people or more are going to grow up to be people who are never satisfied with themselves because they don't look like what people think they should look like. 4 out of 5 people who don't value themselves. And that's the big problem. Even from raising kids on, we put the value on weight instead of on health and on ourselves. But why? Yes, negative body image causes eating disorders. But what causes the negative body image? There are a few varying factors, but the biggest one is the media. And in my mind, 2 aspects of the media in particular: health companies and models. And when I say health companies, I mean the National Institute of Health and pharmaceutical companies. And if you're wondering how in the world do health companies lead to these health problems, well, just hear me out. The National Institute of Health establishes the BMI. It publishes that, the scale that doctors use to diagnose nutritional health. And PE teachers use it from kindergarten and up. It's released to the public in general as well. You can find it online. And what that scale says that they publish is that a BMI of 25 is overweight, and a BMI of 30 is obese. All right, so the first health decrement due to being overweight occurs at a BMI of 25. Health researchers found that an actual health decrement due to being overweight doesn't occur until a BMI of 40. That's a 15-point difference on a not very large scale. And that difference is a big problem. And actually, as is the BMI in general. Why? Well, let's first establish why the BMI in general is a problem. It's a problem because in its nature, it inherently puts the focus on weight. You guys told me earlier, it's based on weight and height. That's it. So athletes encounter this all the time. If they're really muscly, the BMI scale will often say they're overweight because it doesn't take into account muscle mass. Those people aren't overweight, they're just buff. In a similar way, it doesn't take into account genetics, body type, your metabolism, your bone structure. It doesn't take into account any of that. So it makes people aggravate weight with their health, when that's just not the case. And the skewed scale is even more of a problem because not only does it put the focus on weight, it puts the focus on being a small weight. And since more people can't reach that, more people are now paranoid about losing weight and focused on that because of it. And since it's super hard to lose weight when you're focused on that and when your body doesn't actually need to for your health, people are more consistently dissatisfied with themselves because of this skewed scale. So it really affects body image and makes it negative. Additionally, the skewed scale just has some technical problems in that it says that someone with a BMI of 25 is overweight. So the doctor will tell that person that they need to lose weight. However, they're healthy on the accurate scale. So if they do what the doctor tells them and lose weight, they can actually become underweight, which has some of the same consequences that anorexia has that we talked about. And so that could be a really big problem. And on the other side of the spectrum, it makes people who maybe are overweight, they're at a weight that's just not healthy for themselves. It makes them feel like they're so much more overweight, which makes it so much easier to fall into those feelings of hopelessness and giving up on oneself. But let's take a step back. BMI doesn't necessarily have to be bad. If we use the accurate, not the skewed scale, in a certain way, it could be okay. For instance, if doctors used the skewed scale and they then suggested healthy habits based on what the patient, where on the scale that patient lied. Or even better, if doctors took the information they got from the scale, and then if they aren't in that healthy range, they test the individual for health problems associated with whatever end of the range they're on and see if they really are unhealthy or if their body is just different. Because some people are just healthier at a bigger size than other people. Just depends on your body. So then, people turn to dieting programs. And with the skewed scale, more people turn to dieting programs to lose weight. And these dieting programs, they encourage habits that lead to eating disorders. They encourage obsessing about weight and obsessing about calories. And these habits actually foster eating disorders because they encourage this unhealthy relationship with yourself and with food. But the thing about these dieting programs is they make money for pharmaceutical companies. And pharmaceutical companies are associated with the National Institute of Health, who publishes the BMI. So, in order to make money, these health companies encourage negative body image and eating disorders. And then, of course, there are models. We've all heard the model story, I know, a billion times. You guys know that they're not accurate representations, that they're photoshopped, that they're unhealthy, and there are more realistic and healthy models now. But the fact of the matter is that so many models are still like this, and celebrities. And that's actually Sandra Bullock right there, who's a celebrity as well as a model. And take a good look at her legs and her hips and her upper body. She looks like a skeleton. And although that guy's buff, if you take a closer look at him, his proportions are kind of off, and it doesn't look normal. We know that that's not healthy. However, in all those forms of the media that you guys gave me examples of, models like this are in them. And the word model means someone you look up to and someone you try to copy. So all these forms of the media are sending this message that we should be like these people who die on the runway from heart attacks because they're too thin, as so many models do. Or like these guys who take steroids and over-exercise because they're so driven to be muscly. And may I remind you that over-exercising is a form of anorexia and has all those consequences we talked about with anorexia. They send the message directly that being thin or being buff is more important than taking care of yourself. They put that value directly on weight. And when health companies and models do this and send that message to the people who are influenced by them, those people then influence more people through communities like Thinspiration that we talked about before. Right now I'm going to show you some examples of Thinspiration, and I by no means want you to listen to what they're saying, but I want you to be aware that they're out there. These are the sort of things that they involve. These messages that say it's okay to starve yourself as long as you get thin. Making fun of hurting yourself to look good. These messages that Thinspiration sends, and that all media send, for the most part, all of them are not okay. Because they put this value on weight. And I know I've been going on and on about this value on weight and how much of a problem it is. But why I'm going on and on about it is because I had a friend tell me a few months ago that she felt like she was less of a person because of her size. And that is not okay. If someone is unhealthy for another reason, if they're sick, we don't make them feel like they're less of a person. But if someone is, say, overweight for their size, for who they are as a person, we make them feel like they're worth nothing. Or if they're just a different body type than we think is the ideal. That is not how it should be. This value on weight makes people not value themselves for who they are. It makes negative body image happen. It causes eating disorders. It causes unhealthy relationships with food, even if people have a good relationship with their body. So it's a problem. But if instead the value is on health, on taking care of ourselves, things could be a lot better. Because this value on health actually makes it so much easier to be healthy. Because our body, as we've talked about a few times, naturally kind of knows how to take care of itself. It tells you when it's hungry. That's why our stomach growls and why we feel hunger. You feel better when you exercise. So if you focus on healthy, you listen to your body and not some arbitrary number, you're just healthier because you're doing what makes you feel good, and you're happier because your focus is for yourself, not for other people and for these standards that are impossible to meet. Right? And additionally, it just makes you feel better about yourself and your body, because now the only goal you have for your body is to feel good. So if you're healthy, you're gonna like yourself and experience that self-love that makes it so much easier to enjoy your life. On top of that, this value on health makes having a healthy relationship with food easier. Not only because you can listen to your body cues more efficiently and you do that more often, but also because it gives you flexibility. If you're eating in moderation most of the time and you're exercising at a good rate, 5 days a week or 6 days a week, then on Thanksgiving, this value on health also gives you the opportunity to have 4 slices of pumpkin pie and the rest of Thanksgiving dinner, because that's healthy too. I see some of you looking at me with disbelief, but I have a nutritionist, really, she told me this, and everyone really believes that, because having flexibility with food is super healthy as well. And being able on those holidays that are about food to just enjoy it, that's a big part of having a healthy relationship with food. And this value on health allows you to have that, because it makes you not feel guilty about doing that. Because you know it's healthy and you know you're just listening to your body and what feels right. So this value on health is what we need to strive to go for and strive to change our society to. And if you think that this value on weight is not a problem at White River High School, I'm afraid you're wrong. Because I graduated just last year, and when I was here, I had some friends, people who were my friends when I was anorexic, when I was super skinny, and who were never my friends before that. And then once I started gaining weight to be at a weight that was healthy for me, they stopped being my friends. And I can't quite ignore that correlation. They valued me simply because I was skinny, even though I was irritable and not myself. That happened here. So it's a problem here too. And you guys need to change it. I know you're thinking, how in the world can I change it? I'm a teenager, what are you talking about? Well, you can actually do a lot. First of all, by supporting each other. And when I say support, all I mean is complimenting each other. That's it. On physical things, which I'm sure you already do, compliment people's outfits, how they look, their hair, but also on who they are as people. Saying, wow, you're so talented. Or wow, I love your positive attitude. You make me smile every day. Little things like that. Or you look so healthy. That's a great one. All those things, just little things like that help so much, because the media over here is telling us you're not good enough. You need to change. But if you come over here and say you're good enough, you don't need to change, suddenly a person has 2 forces instead of 1 weighing on them. So it's so much easier to fight against the negative force when they have some positive force also lifting them up. It's kind of simple science, really. Also, you guys can inform. And when I say inform, I do not mean you need to do presentations like this. That would be unreasonable to ask you to do. But I do expect that you share a little bit about what you learned today in simple ways. For instance, when someone says within the next 2 weeks, I need to lose weight, which I'm sure you'll hear, say, hey, maybe you could phrase that as I need to be healthier. Or if you don't want to make it about them, because I get calling people out can be rude, right? Make it about yourself. If you hear someone saying, gosh, I need to lose weight, or whatever it may be, say, hey, could you not talk about weight in front of me? I'm trying to focus on health. And although that makes it about you, it sure does make them think, and think about the value they're putting on weight, and maybe then put less of a value on weight. And that can do a lot. In a similar way, I'd ask that you stop saying fat and skinny. Words have a huge importance. And this goes back throughout all of our history. To use kind of an off-field example, when we were a segregated nation, and even farther back when we enslaved African Americans were referred to using the N-word.
Oh.
And that word was a word that connotated discrimination. It said that they were less than white people when white people used it. And when that discrimination against African Americans became universally unacceptable, it became no longer acceptable for white people to use that word to refer to African Americans. In the same way that we don't say the R word anymore to refer to people with learning disabilities, because it says that they are less than everybody else. That's just not the case. And these words, fat and skinny sometimes even, they do the same thing. They say that people who aren't the ideal size are less than everybody else. And so if we stop saying them, and even if you ask other people to stop saying them, it really helps decrease the value on weight and encourage the value on health, which is my biggest goal and what is all of these steps will do. They'll encourage health above all else, which I believe is what needs to happen.